In the small town of Kambala, there lived a young woman named Amara. She was 20 years old, full of life, and known for her gentle heart. Amara lived with her father, Baba Musa, in a small clay house near the river. Every morning she helped him in the garden, growing cassava and maize, then sold them in the market. Everyone in Kambala knew her as a kind girl who never spoke harshly to anyone. But there was one thing that made her different. Amara had a few strands of hair growing on her chin. When she was a child it was not so noticeable. Her father would laugh softly and say, "It makes you special, my daughter." But as she grew older people began to notice. Some women whispered when she passed by. The boys laughed and called her names. Even her friends slowly drifted away. They teased her gently at first, but soon it became cruel. When Amara walked to the well to fetch water, she could hear giggles behind her back. Some girls would cover their faces with cloths and pretend to have beards, saying, "Look, we are Amara." Amara pretended not to hear. She smiled and kept walking, holding her water pot high. Inside her heart hurt deeply. At night, she sometimes sat outside her home looking at the stars, wondering why she had to be different. But her father would always find her there and sit beside her. "Courage," he said one evening, "is not about fighting others. It is about facing the world with your head high, even when the world laughs at you." Those words stayed with her. In school things were not easy either. Amara loved reading and singing. She often helped her teacher, Madam Lila, clean the classroom and arrange the books. But some students made fun of her during breaks. A group of girls led by Simi, the most popular one, would whisper loudly, "Who will ever marry a girl with a beard?" The others would laugh and Amara would pretend to be busy with her notes. One day when she went home she cried quietly. Her father saw her tears and said, "Amara, you cannot change what people say. But you can decide not to let their words stop you." Amara tried to stay strong. She sang while working in the garden, and her voice was soft and beautiful. Birds would sit on the fence as if they were listening to her. Music was the one thing that made her forget her pain. She often imagined standing on a big stage, singing before a large crowd and people cheering her name. But when she looked at her reflection in the river, she would sigh. "Who would ever listen to me?" she thought. One afternoon, the town announced a small talent show for young people. The winner would get a chance to travel to the city and sing on radio. Amara's heart jumped with excitement. She wanted to join, but then she remembered how people laughed at her. She tried to push the thought away, but the dream stayed. That night, as she cooked dinner, she told her father about the show. "I want to sing," she said softly. Baba Musa smiled. "Then sing, my child. Let them laugh if they want. You have a gift, and gifts are meant to shine." The day of the show arrived. The town square was full of people. Music, laughter, and the smell of roasted corn filled the air. Amara stood behind the stage, her hands shaking. She wore a long blue dress and a headscarf. Her heart beat fast as she waited for her turn. She could hear the crowd cheering for others and fear grew inside her. When her name was called, a few people in the audience already started whispering. "The bearded girl is going to sing," someone shouted. Laughter spread through the crowd. Amara stepped onto the stage, her eyes wet, but she remembered her father's words, "Courage is not in hiding your scars." She closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice rose, soft and clear like a river flowing through the valley. The noise faded for a moment and people stared. Her song told a story about being brave, about not giving up even when the world turns its back. For a short while everyone listened. But then someone laughed again, loud and harsh, breaking the silence. The laughter spread and Amara's heart broke. She tried to finish her song, but her voice trembled. Tears filled her eyes as she rushed off the stage. Behind the curtain she cried, her shoulders shaking. "Why are they so cruel?" she whispered. The host gave her a small smile, but she could feel the pity in his eyes. Amara left the show early, walking home under the dark sky. When she reached home, Baba Musa was sitting outside, waiting. He saw her face and didn't need to ask. He stood and opened his arms. "You are still my brave daughter," he said softly. "The world may not understand you today, but one day it will." Amara buried her face in his chest and cried. That night she couldn't sleep. The laughter kept echoing in her ears. She thought about never singing again. But something inside her refused to die. The next morning she stood by the river looking at her reflection. The water was calm. She touched her chin where the soft hair grew and smiled weakly. "Maybe this is who I am meant to be," she said quietly. The birds sang in the trees and she began to hum. Slowly the pain faded, replaced by a quiet strength. She realized that she didn't need the crowd's approval to be happy. She only needed to believe in herself. From that day Amara started singing again, not for others but for herself. She sang while working in the garden, at the well, and even in the market. Some people still whispered, but others began to notice her voice more than her beard. One old woman told her, "My child, your voice brings peace to my heart." Those words made Amara smile for the first time in weeks. She began to dream again, not of fame but of courage, the courage to stand tall in her own skin. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she no longer feared it. She had learned something precious, that sometimes what people laugh at can become the very thing that makes you special. Amara walked home that evening with a calm heart. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and gold. Her father was waiting at the door, smiling proudly. "You see," he said, "the sun never hides even when the clouds cover it. It still shines." Amara looked up at the sky and nodded. She was ready to shine too, not despite her difference but because of it. The day was bright and warm in the small town of Kambala. The streets were filled with music, laughter, and the smell of roasted corn. Everyone was excited because that afternoon was the town's big talent show. It was an event that happened once every year, and people came from nearby villages to watch. Children ran around with balloons, and traders set up stalls filled with snacks and colorful clothes. Amara stood behind the stage, her hands shaking as she held her song sheet. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might burst. She had dreamed of this day for so long, a chance to sing in front of everyone, to let them see that she was more than the girl with a beard. She wore a simple yellow dress and had tied her hair neatly. Her father had hugged her that morning and said, "Go, my daughter. Sing like the world is listening." Those words stayed in her heart. Behind the stage, other performers were talking and laughing. Some looked nervous too, but most were full of confidence. Amara stood quietly in the corner, humming softly to calm herself. She could hear the crowd cheering for the dancer who was performing before her. The sound of drums filled the air and people clapped in rhythm. The host, a cheerful man with a wide smile, took the microphone and shouted, "Next we have Amara from Kambala. She will be singing for us today." For a moment, Amara froze. Her legs felt heavy, but she took a deep breath and stepped forward. The sunlight hit her face as she walked onto the stage. The crowd was huge, far bigger than she had imagined. Faces looked up at her from every corner, some smiling, some curious. But then a voice from somewhere shouted, "Look, it's the bearded girl," and laughter spread like fire through the crowd. Amara's heart sank. Her fingers trembled as she held the microphone. She looked at the people in front of her, some covering their mouths as they laughed, others whispering to one another. For a moment she wanted to run away. She felt the same sharp pain she had felt all her life, that cold sting of being different. But then she remembered her father's voice, "Courage is not in hiding your scars." She closed her eyes and began to sing. At first her voice was soft and shaky. But as she sang the first few lines, her fear started to fade. Her song was about hope, about finding light even when the world turns dark. Her voice rose higher, clear and pure, floating over the laughter. Slowly the noise died down. A few people lowered their heads, surprised by how sweet her voice sounded. For a short moment, the town square was silent except for her song. The sun shone brightly and even the birds on the nearby trees seemed to listen. But then someone at the back shouted again, "She sounds nice but she still looks funny." The laughter came back, louder this time. Amara felt her chest tighten. Her throat began to hurt, but she kept singing, forcing her voice to stay strong. Her eyes filled with tears but she refused to stop. She sang through the pain, through the noise, through the shame. Her voice trembled at the last note, and as soon as it ended the crowd clapped, not because they were moved but because the show was over. Some still laughed as she turned and walked off the stage. Behind the curtain, Amara ran until she found a quiet corner. She sat on the floor, holding her face in her hands. Tears rolled down her cheeks and she couldn't stop them. Her heart felt heavy like a stone. She had given everything she had, her courage, her voice, her dream, and they had laughed at her again. The other performers passed by, whispering among themselves. Some felt sorry for her but didn't say a word. Only one girl, a dancer named Kemi, stopped beside her. "Your voice was beautiful," she said softly. Amara looked up with red eyes. "Then why did they laugh?" she asked. Kemi shook her head. "Because they don't see what's beautiful yet." Then she left, leaving Amara with her thoughts. When the show ended, Amara stayed behind. The crowd went home still talking and laughing. The workers began taking down the stage. She walked slowly out of the empty square, her shoes dusty, her dress wrinkled. Every step felt heavy. She didn't want to go home, didn't want her father to see her cry. She walked by the river instead and sat on a rock, staring at her reflection in the water. The reflection showed her face, tired, sad, and different. She touched her chin gently. "Why can't they just see me?" she whispered to herself. "Why do they only see this?" The wind blew softly and the water rippled, breaking her reflection. She sat there for a long time thinking about all the dreams she once had. She had imagined people clapping for her, cheering her name and smiling with pride. But reality was cruel. It made her doubt everything, her voice, her dream, even herself. The sun began to set, painting the sky with orange and pink. Amara finally stood up and walked home. Her father, Baba Musa, was sitting outside their house as usual. When he saw her face, he knew something had gone wrong. "Did you sing?" he asked gently. Amara nodded but didn't speak. He stood and opened his arms. She ran to him and cried on his shoulder. "They laughed, Baba. They all laughed." He held her quietly until her tears stopped. "Let them laugh," he said softly. "Their laughter says nothing about you. You sang, didn't you? That means you were brave. Bravery is not about being cheered for. It's about standing when others try to bring you down." Amara wiped her eyes but she didn't speak. Her father smiled faintly and said, "The river never asks permission to flow. It just moves. That's how you must be. Keep moving, my daughter." That night, Amara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She could still hear the laughter echoing in her mind. But under that noise she also heard her own voice, the sound of her song. It reminded her that for a few moments she had been strong. Even if they didn't see it, she had felt it. Days passed and she didn't sing again. She avoided the market and the square. She spent her time in the garden, quiet and thoughtful. But whenever she watered the plants, she found herself humming softly. It was like her voice refused to disappear. She realized she still loved to sing even if no one listened. One morning as the sun rose over the hills, Amara stood by the river again. The air was cool and calm. She looked at her reflection, the same girl with the same soft beard, and smiled weakly. "Maybe they laugh today," she whispered, "but one day they will listen." She took a deep breath and began to sing just for herself. The birds joined her, chirping along. Her voice filled the air, gentle and free. For the first time she didn't feel ashamed. She didn't feel small. She just felt like Amara, the girl with the voice that could touch hearts. And though the town didn't know it yet, that small moment by the river was the beginning of her real song, the one no one could silence. The days after the talent show were quiet and heavy for Amara. The laughter of the crowd still echoed in her ears every night. She tried to hum while doing chores, but the sound of her own voice made her remember that painful day. So she stopped singing altogether. Her father noticed the silence in their home. He didn't ask her to sing again. He only watched her with gentle eyes, hoping she would heal in her own time. Each morning, Amara went to the market to help him sell cassava and maize. The market was always busy, people shouting prices, children chasing each other, music from radios playing loudly. It was full of life, but to Amara, it felt dull. She moved like a shadow, quiet and lost in her thoughts. She missed the feeling of singing, but the memory of laughter held her voice hostage. One afternoon, as she packed the empty baskets after selling, she heard the deep sound of drums coming from the corner of the market. It was an old man named Uncle Cato, known by everyone in Kambala. He was a street musician who played every day under the big mango tree. His drums were worn out, but his music was full of energy. People often threw coins into his basket and he always smiled and thanked them. That day Amara sat nearby to rest. Uncle Cato noticed her and smiled. "Ah, the quiet girl," he said with a friendly laugh. "You don't like noise, do you?" Amara smiled politely but didn't say much. He played a few more beats and then stopped. "You have sad eyes," he said. "Sad eyes don't belong to someone your age." Amara looked down and said softly, "People laugh at me." "People laugh at many things," Uncle Cato said, beating the drum softly. "Sometimes they laugh because they are afraid. Sometimes because they don't understand." Amara hesitated, then said, "I used to sing. But now I can't. They laughed when I did." Uncle Cato nodded slowly. "Ah, I remember that day. The bearded girl who sang like the wind." Amara's eyes widened. "You were there?" "Yes," he said. "And while others laughed, I listened. You have a voice that comes from the heart, not from pride. That kind of voice is rare." Amara looked away. "It doesn't matter. I don't sing anymore." He tapped his drum gently and said, "Then you let them win." She frowned a little. "What do you mean?" "People laugh to make you small," he said. "If you stop doing what you love, you give them what they want. But if you keep singing, for yourself, not for them, you win. Those words stayed with Amara. She walked home that evening thinking about them. The sunset painted the sky in orange and pink, and she felt something move in her heart, a small spark of courage she thought was gone. That night after dinner she sat by the window and looked at the moon. Her father was asleep and the world was quiet. She whispered softly to herself, maybe I can sing again. Just for me. She closed her eyes and began to hum an old lullaby her mother used to sing when she was little. Her voice was shaky at first, but it soon grew stronger. The sound filled the small room, soft and sweet. For the first time in weeks she smiled. The next morning she decided to visit Uncle Cato again. When she found him under the mango tree, he smiled as if he had been waiting. Did you sing? He asked. Amara nodded shyly. Yes, last night. He laughed, the sound full of joy. Good. Then you are alive again. They spent the day talking about music. Uncle Cato told her stories about when he was young, how he played drums in big cities and met many singers. Music, he said, is not about how you look. It is about how you make people feel. Amara listened carefully. She felt her heart growing lighter with every word. In the days that followed, Amara began to visit him often. She helped him clean his drums and learned how to play simple rhythms. In return, he taught her how to believe in her voice again. When you sing, he said one day, don't sing to please. Sing to heal. Soon, Amara started singing again, first quietly at home, then while helping in the garden. Her father often listened from a distance, smiling but saying nothing. He didn't want to break the magic that was returning. One day, Uncle Cato brought her an old phone. Use this, he said. Record your songs. Let the wind carry your music to the world. Amara was unsure. Who will listen to me? Maybe no one. Maybe thousands, he replied. But you will never know until you try. That evening, Amara recorded her first song. She sat by the window with her lantern beside her, the sound of crickets filling the air. She sang about courage, about being different, about not giving up. Her voice was soft but full of emotion. When she listened to the recording, she smiled, not because it was perfect but because it was real. The next morning, she asked her father for help. Together they went to the internet cafe in town. The shopkeeper helped her upload the song online. She didn't hide her face. She looked straight at the camera, her beard visible, her eyes bright. This is me, she said in the video before singing. At first, nothing happened. A few people saw it, some left kind comments, others made jokes. Amara tried not to care. Uncle Cato told her, keep singing. Every song is a seed. Some seeds take time to grow. So she recorded another song, then another. Her confidence grew. She began to smile more, to laugh again. Weeks later, something unexpected happened. One morning, when she opened her phone at the cafe, she saw that one of her songs had thousands of views. People from other towns, even from other countries, were commenting. Your voice is beautiful. You gave me hope. You are brave. Tears filled Amara's eyes as she read the messages. She couldn't believe it. The same voice people once laughed at was now being praised by strangers who saw her heart, not her face. Her father was proud. You see, he said. When you sing from the heart, even the world listens. Uncle Cato smiled when she told him the news. Now you understand, he said. You were never meant to hide. Amara kept singing and sharing her music. Each song carried a piece of her story, her pain, her strength, her hope. The laughter that once hurt her no longer mattered. She was no longer the bearded girl who ran off the stage. She was Amara, the singer with the voice that healed hearts. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the hills, Amara sat under the same mango tree with Uncle Cato. He tapped his drum softly and said, You have started a new song in your life. Never stop singing it. Amara smiled and began to hum along with his rhythm. The market sounds surrounded them, children laughing, traders shouting, drums beating, but above it all her voice rose, calm and strong. For the first time she felt free, free to be herself, free to sing without fear. She realized that true beauty was not about hiding what made her different but about showing it with pride. And as the wind carried her song across Kambala, people began to listen, not to her beard, not to her face, but to her heart. Amara could hardly believe how quickly her life had changed. Just a few months ago, she had been the quiet girl from Kambala who hid her voice from the world. Now her songs played on phones, radios, and even in buses across the country. Her voice had become a sound people recognized, one that carried hope and courage. Still, Amara stayed humble. She helped her father in the market and visited Uncle Cato every few days. One morning, as she helped pack cassava into baskets, her father showed her a newspaper. Her picture was on the front page. The headline said, "The Bearded Singer Who Inspired a Nation." Amara's hands trembled as she read it. She laughed softly, half in disbelief. "They called me the Bearded Singer," she said. Her father smiled proudly. "And they said it with respect this time," he replied. Soon, Amara received an invitation to perform in the capital city. The letter came from a famous music company that had heard her songs online. They wanted her to sing at a large concert where many well-known artists would perform. She was nervous but excited. "Do you think I can do it?" she asked Uncle Cato. The old man smiled and tapped his drum. "You were born ready," he said. "The world has already heard you, now it's time they see you." The city was loud and bright, nothing like Kambala. Tall buildings shone with lights and cars moved like rivers of color. Amara had never seen such a place before. For a moment she felt small. But when she looked at the stage being prepared for the concert, her heart filled with purpose. She wasn't there to impress anyone, she was there to sing her truth. On the night of the concert, the hall was full. People filled every seat, waiting for the performances. Backstage, Amara stood quietly, wearing a simple blue dress and a small necklace her father had given her. Her hands shook slightly, but she closed her eyes and whispered, "I will sing for those who are afraid to be themselves." When her name was called, the crowd cheered. She walked onto the stage, her steps slow but steady. The bright lights shone on her face and she saw thousands of eyes watching. Some people whispered when they saw her beard, but no one laughed. The music began, soft and gentle, and Amara started to sing. Her voice rose like a warm wind, clear and full of feeling. The hall grew silent. Each word she sang told a story, of pain, of courage, of finding strength when the world turns away. By the time she finished, many in the audience had tears in their eyes. The silence broke into thunderous applause. Amara bowed, her heart full. She had done it. The next morning, videos of her performance spread across social media. People shared her story with words like brave, inspiring, and beautiful. She received thousands of messages from strangers saying how her courage gave them strength to face their own struggles. Some even sent photos showing their own differences proudly. Amara read each message with gratitude. She had not only found her voice again, she had helped others find theirs too. Weeks later, she was invited to perform on television. Her songs were played on radio stations all over the country. Even schools used her story to teach children about kindness and acceptance. The girl who had once been mocked was now loved by many. Yet, despite her fame, Amara never forgot her roots. She still visited Uncle Cato under the mango tree whenever she could. "You did it," he told her proudly. "No," she said, smiling, "we did it." Months passed, and Amara decided to return to Kambala for a special concert. The town had changed and so had the people. Posters with her face hung on walls, and everyone talked excitedly about her return. "Our Amara is coming home," they said. The day of the concert arrived. The open field was decorated with colorful fabrics, lights and flowers. Children ran around holding small flags with her name written on them. Even the same people who had once laughed at her came early to find good seats. They brought gifts, baskets of fruit and handmade cards. Many of them felt nervous, unsure how to face her after the way they had treated her. When Amara arrived, the crowd cheered loudly. She walked to the stage, her blue dress flowing in the evening breeze. She looked around and saw familiar faces, some from her childhood, some who had once mocked her. For a moment, she felt her heart tighten, but then she smiled warmly. She picked up the microphone and said softly, "Once I sang here and people laughed. But I don't hold anger in my heart. Today I sing not to remember the pain, but to share the joy of forgiveness." The crowd went silent. Some people bowed their heads in shame. Then the music started and Amara began to sing. Her voice carried through the air, strong, proud, and full of love. It was as if the wind itself stopped to listen. Her songs spoke of hope and courage, of loving yourself no matter what others say. The people listened quietly. Some held hands, others wiped tears. Even those who had laughed the loudest that day at the talent show felt their hearts soften. Among the crowd was a woman named Lami, who had once been one of the loudest mockers. Tears streamed down her face as she listened. When the concert ended, she pushed through the crowd and reached the stage. "Amara," she said, her voice shaking, "I was one of those who laughed at you. I am so sorry." Amara looked at her for a moment, then smiled gently. "It's okay," she said. "You don't need to say sorry. We all grow and I am happy that you came today." Lami began to cry harder. "You are a better person than all of us," she said. Amara shook her head. No, I am just someone who learned that kindness is louder than laughter. The crowd clapped, and many others came forward to thank her, to apologize and to celebrate her. For the first time, Kambala felt like a place full of love, not judgment. Children shouted her name, asking for songs, and the elders blessed her for bringing pride to their town. Later that evening, after the concert ended, Amara sat under the same mango tree where she used to talk with Uncle Cato. The night was calm and the stars sparkled above. Uncle Cato sat beside her, smiling proudly. "You see, child," he said, "you turned their laughter into music." Amara looked out at the quiet town, where the echoes of her songs still floated in the air. She felt peace deep in her heart. "I didn't change them with words," she said softly. "I changed them with love." Uncle Cato nodded. "And that," he said, tapping his drum, "is the most powerful song of all." Amara smiled. She looked up at the stars and whispered a short prayer of thanks. She had faced shame, pain, and loneliness, but she had also found strength, courage, and purpose. The same voice that once brought her tears now brought healing, not only to her but to everyone who listened. As the night breeze brushed her face, Amara closed her eyes and hummed softly. Somewhere in the distance, the people of Kambala were still singing her song. And this time, every note carried love, respect, and the memory of how one brave girl taught a town to see beauty in what they once mocked. The last note of Amara's song hung in the air like a whisper carried by the wind. The crowd in the open field of Kambala stood still, their eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke. Even the night breeze seemed to pause. The stars above shimmered softly, and the sound of crickets filled the quiet spaces between hearts that were learning to feel again. Amara stood at the center of the stage, breathing slowly, her eyes glistening under the lights. She looked around and saw the faces of the people who had once laughed at her. The shopkeeper who used to joke about her beard, the children who once called her names, and even the women who used to whisper behind her back. They were all there, their faces now filled with admiration, not mockery. She took a deep breath and spoke softly, her voice clear and calm. "You once laughed at me for being different," she said. "But now I stand here because of that difference." The silence that followed was deep and full of emotion. Some people lowered their heads, their hearts heavy with regret. Others pressed their hands to their chests, touched by the strength and grace in her words. Then slowly, like the breaking of a wave, the crowd began to clap. The sound grew louder and louder until it became a storm of applause. Some shouted her name. Others simply wept. Amara smiled, her eyes shining with tears she did not try to hide. In that moment she felt something inside her finally heal. The laughter that had once hurt her was now replaced by joy and respect. The pain she had carried for so long had turned into something beautiful. After the concert, many people came forward to meet her. The elders of Kambala spoke first. "You have taught us something we should have known all along," said Elder Mosi. "A heart that is kind is more beautiful than a face that fits the world's idea of beauty." Another woman stepped forward, the same one who used to laugh the loudest when Amara walked through the market. She held a small flower in her hand and said, "Forgive us. We were blind. We saw only what was outside, not what was within." Amara took the flower gently and smiled. "There is nothing to forgive," she said. "We all learn at different times." Uncle Cato stood near the stage, smiling proudly, his old drum by his side. He watched as people surrounded Amara, their faces warm and full of admiration. When she finally reached him, he said quietly, "You did what music is meant to do, you changed hearts." Amara nodded, her smile soft. "You once told me that people laugh at what they don't understand," she said. "Now they understand." He tapped his drum lightly. "And they will never forget." That night, after everyone had gone home, Amara stayed behind for a while. The moonlight washed over the empty stage, and the echoes of applause still lingered in the air. She sat down, took off her shoes, and looked at the quiet town below. Kambala seemed different now, gentler, more peaceful. The same streets that once carried whispers about her now carried songs of her courage. She thought about her journey, from the girl who cried backstage at the talent show to the woman who now stood proud before the same people who once mocked her. She remembered the nights she had been too afraid to sing, and the mornings when Uncle Cato's words gave her strength to try again. Every step had been hard, but it had led her here, to this moment of peace. When she finally walked home, the air was cool and sweet. Her father waited for her outside their house, sitting on a wooden stool. When he saw her, he stood up, his eyes full of pride. "I heard the whole town cheering," he said with a laugh. Amara smiled. "They listened this time." He nodded slowly. "They did more than listen. They learned." Inside the house, the smell of her father's cooking filled the air. They sat together and ate quietly. After a while, her father said, "Do you know what your mother would say if she were here?" Amara shook her head gently. "She would say, 'You turned your pain into a song and that song changed the world.'" Amara looked at her father and smiled. "Maybe not the whole world," she said softly, "but at least our little Kambala." Her father chuckled. "Sometimes that is enough." The next morning the sun rose golden over the hills, and the town of Kambala buzzed with new energy. At the market, people talked about Amara's concert, not with laughter but with pride. Children sang her songs as they played, and shopkeepers hummed her melodies while setting up their stalls. Her story had become a lesson everyone carried in their hearts. Even the teacher at the local school spoke to the students about her. "You see," she said, "kindness is not something you wear on your face. It lives in your actions." Amara showed us that courage makes a person truly beautiful. Days turned into weeks, and Amara continued to sing. She performed in other towns, always carrying Kambala in her heart. But no matter how far she went, she returned often to the mango tree, where Uncle Cato still played his drums. Sometimes they played music together for the children who gathered around. The laughter of those children sounded different now, pure and happy. One afternoon, as she sat under the mango tree watching the children dance, Amara said, "You know, Uncle, I used to wish I was like everyone else." He looked at her and smiled. "And now?" "Now I thank God I am not," she said with a laugh. He nodded. "The world doesn't need more of the same. It needs people brave enough to be themselves." Amara thought about those words as she looked at the smiling faces around her. She realized that courage had brought her more than fame, it had brought her peace. The beard that once made her feel ashamed was now a symbol of strength. It told her story without words, a story that would live long after her songs faded. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold, Amara sang softly, her voice blending with the sound of Uncle Cato's drum. The people passing by stopped to listen. Some closed their eyes, letting the music fill their hearts. When the song ended, a small girl stepped forward and said shyly, "Auntie Amara, I want to sing too, but people say my voice is strange." Amara smiled kindly and touched the girl's shoulder. "Then sing anyway," she said. "Don't let their words steal your song." The girl smiled and the people around clapped softly. In that small moment, Amara knew her lesson had reached another heart. From that day on, Kambala became known not for its laughter at someone's pain, but for its songs of courage and acceptance. The people learned that beauty was not in smooth faces or perfect shapes but in the kindness and strength that live inside a person. Amara's name became a symbol, a reminder that even the deepest hurt can bloom into something beautiful when faced with love. And though her journey had been hard, she would not have changed a single step. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Amara stood by her window and whispered to herself, "Different is not bad. Different is just another word for special." Her voice carried softly into the night, like a promise, one that would live in every song she sang and in every heart she touched.